How can local and national governments in South Africa support business to adapt to CBAM? And what policies or incentives could facilitate a smoother transition and enhance compliance?
So government intervention and coordination when it comes to CBAM is critical. The first thing is to support companies to establish the monitoring, reporting, and verification systems. We need to make sure that this MRV system is aligned with our own reporting that we have in the country for carbon tax purposes, but also for our greenhouse gas emission inventory. And we want to try and make sure that there's no heavy burden. We know often companies have to report similar information in different formats, and it makes it quite burdensome. So how do we kind of make sure that we align all the reportings and we support companies to set up these systems, particularly small to medium-sized enterprises that don't necessarily have the resources to set up such systems on their own. So that is a key function really of national government to support companies in being ready. Then there are a number of sort of routes that government can take to help companies reap some benefits. The first one is clearly a bit of a diplomatic route and trying to negotiate with the EU or push back against some of the measures that are being implemented so that South African companies can get more time to adapt. I think we have to obviously accept that this is a new reality that we're living in. But clearly, if we could be granted more room to adjust, acknowledging our starting point, which is very carbon intensive, and the fact that decarbonizing, particularly steel and aluminum value chains, would take time. It would be good to get more time, and so here I think it is clearly something that the South African government's currently exploring and working with partners in the global south to try and get more time to comply. It's also important because it adds up. I've mentioned it. The EU is the first one, but now the UK has announced that they will implement CBAM from 2027, and then other countries will do the same shortly after that. So the burden of compliance adds up. And I also mentioned it, there are many other measures that companies have to deal with. So getting more room to adapt would be important. Then a green industrial policy package is paramount from the government side to really help companies effectively decarbonize, help them to introduce new production processes, which at times are disruptive and somewhat risky. And so companies need support for that. And also companies need support to procure renewable energy as much as they need. And so, providing some sort of policy package to really fast track the decarbonization of companies is a no regret option from a South African perspective. It reduces the vulnerability, it increases the resilience, and ultimately it increases the competitiveness of national businesses. So for me, that should be effectively the big push, the big push that we can see. Thirdly, and it's almost like a last resort, but if we reach a point now when CBAM is liable in 2026, that companies have to pay the CBAM at the EU border. I think it is the duty of government to make sure that any of the proceeds that would be paid to the EU are actually retained in South Africa. Better a company pays the carbon tax here in South Africa and that we can retain the revenues and then recycle them in the economy, then a company pays it at the EU border. Of course, from a company perspective, they pay either way. But from a country perspective, that then enables us to take that revenue and hopefully recycle it back to these sectors that need to decarbonize and help them actually fast track decarbonization. And so if we come to that point where we have to pay, I think it's really important that we don't see revenue flow from South Africa to the EU, and of course that could then help finance the other interventions around decarbonization, MRV systems, and just overall readiness.